Good afternoon, everyone. Mary Sloan here with another episode of Inspirational Influencer News, People Making a Difference. And our guest this afternoon, Adrienne Tichy.
I'm having all kinds of computer issues. Yes, it's ticky, like sticky.
Is certainly someone who is making a difference. She was born with a challenge, but you would not have known that to look at her. And that's what she wants to tell you about. She has become a recovery advocate. She's co-owner of the Lodge Recovery Residence Community and creation of their new virtual program called Recovery Comes Home. Known locally as champions for the marginalized, she and her husband Jim very often refer to their clients come from money originally, even if that is upper middle class. Other clients are so hooked they will do anything in order to survive as they see it. And that means getting drugs or booze or both. Because Adrienne has lived with a life-threatening condition herself, she can use her experience to empathize with the clients while expecting a concerted effort to change, just as she has had to make a concerted effort to change and actually survive in her own life. Not tipping the scales at 135, the highest weight ever, Adrienne is healthy enough to help others through an equally confounding diagnosis: addict. Her unique perspective and ability to see the wounded girl within the frightened woman gives her the best possible chance of success. There are many similarities to active addict and the patient role, which is one Adrienne sadly knows way too well. So she wants the world to understand that this is not just an individual trek, but a journey for the whole community. So Adrienne, tell us about how this all started and what our listeners really need to know about the journey you have been on so they can understand how you are helping others.
Sure, Mary. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I would say prompt me again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just give us some background about how you got here. I mean, your start was as a baby, which
that's true. And my
normal.
start, right? And I looked so normal. I had the 10 fingers and the 10 toes, and all the boxes were checked. And we went forward as a normal family. But my mother knew something was different from the beginning. She could tell by my diapers. And of course, she took me into the doctor, and the doctor, it was 1971 at the time, was like, "Oh, honey, she's got colic. This is a colicky baby, and you're just going to have to learn to live with it," which is a phrase that we would unfortunately have to hear many, many times throughout my illness journey. Just going to have to learn to live with it. And thankfully, I didn't come from a stock of parents that just said, you got to live with it. So my mom and I were ardent researchers. We found the specialists in the country, and they too were like diabetes. What I have is called pancreatitis, and there is no cure for a divided pancreas that I was born with. About 5% of the population have it, and then about another 1% of those 5 end up with pancreatitis all their life. And really it became a game of management, to be able to stay, because I look so normal that I pass for normal, and my expectations that people have of me are super high. So I learned how to meet those people's expectations. And even when I was, 78 pounds in a wheelchair 3 years ago, I just have always set the bar high for myself. I didn't want to be on the sidelines looking at life go by. You know what I mean?
Well, what I found so interesting when we were talking was the fact that you actually struggled to eat food. And for most of us, that's not our issue. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that struggle and what you've had to do to try and overcome it to get to the point that you now actually weigh almost normal.
Yes. So what that's meant in my own life with pancreatic insufficiency and an inability to absorb the food that is then digested. You know, you have three parts to the digestive process of the pancreas. First, you have to digest your food with enzymes and stomach acids and things like that. Then you have to absorb your food, and then the body gets rid of what it can't use. So I had the problem in the middle there. I could eat the food. The problem isn't my mouth. It wouldn't matter if I digested the food and couldn't absorb it. You see, people would say all the time, just put your food in a blender. Well, who wants to put their food in a blender? Number one, but number two, it still has to be digested and absorbed. So I did spend now it's been about 17 cumulative years, if you add it all up, that I spent on some type of feeding tube or a central IV, so I could put something called TPN, nuts nutrition through an IV.
That just sounds horrible. I mean, for someone who really enjoys my food, but I don't want to have it through an IV or a feeding tube. That just sounds so incredibly.
No, and neither did I. But you know what, Mary? I found ways to get around it. I would print out pictures of lobsters and stick it on my IV pole. I would always find ways to find the silver lining.
Good thing.
And the thing that I would say that hurt me the most, I used to love good food. And because of all of the pain and how many times I've vomited and all of that, I don't get hungry. And a lot of people have thought erroneously they would like to have my diet. But the other side of this that nobody sees is all of the time where you're infusing yourself, you're hooking up, you're rearing down, so it's a 12-hour infusion feeding. So that would be my nights. Like I would infuse overnight and I would go to work. We all have to do what we have to do. A lot of people, I think, mistakenly feel like, well, you could do it, but I could never give food up. I couldn't imagine not being able to eat food. You find a way. You find a way to survive.
Well, I mean, if your food is causing you unbelievable distress and pain, you would pretty quickly be happy to give up food. So how have you managed to get to the point that you can sometimes eat normal food or sort of normal food?
Yeah, I can eat normal food all the time. The question is when I'm absorbing it. And so it was about 2.5 years ago that I was told by the doctors again that I would have to go back on this TPN feeding through the central line. That also meant getting a line in the first place, a vein, and even the doctors that are specialists in putting lines in heart areas even have a hard trouble getting my veins in. So I figured I had to do it on my own. I started doing a lot of bone marrow, a lot of bone broth that really gave me those trace minerals and nutrition that I was needing so badly. I also I did Boost. It's called BOOST. It's like Ensure. You could just drink a quick one of those and it's about 250 calories. I put myself on about a 2,500 calorie diet a day.
And
So
you can take
mhm.
the, as long as it's sort of a liquidy type food, you can intake it reasonably naturally. Is that right?
No, not even.
No.
Okay, so when you have a pancreas attack, you're nothing by mouth, zero. Because what the problem is, if you put anything in your stomach and that pancreas starts to activate, it is not protected from those enzymes.
Oh.
It'll damage your organ. Mine's half there because half of it has been eaten away by my pancreas itself. And I have half the regular number of normal intestines. But it's those parts. I'll tell you, I was born ill, so I don't know anything different, right? But this is the highest weight I have ever been at. I am so ecstatic that I kept going. I kept going in the 80s when it's, months in the 80s, months and months in the 90s, where it didn't feel like I was making any headway. And then I finally, I think the cumulative effect of that many calories, by February, March, I was over 100. And then here by August, I'm up another 30 pounds.
Well, so your pancreas is okay now, but you
It's right
never
now, it's
know.
okay. Yep. It's
And
okay now. And honestly, we don't ever know, but that's the same with anyone, isn't it? I mean, none of us know really how
no,
long we
it's
have
true.
here.
It's true. None of us really know.
None of us really know. And I was 30 years old in a coma and had to face that reality that life could be over then, but thank God it wasn't. That was the first coma 20 years ago. And it's been a journey, paddled back to life 5 years ago. But the biggest thing was doing this on my own, can you imagine my trepidation at leaving the medical community? I didn't like what they did to me, but they had convinced me I was 100% dependent on them. And I just proved to them that in the last 2.5 years that I'm not.
Well, you proved to them, you proved to the world, and you proved to yourself, more importantly. So that's amazing, whatever you have done. So as a result, you and your husband now have taken on huge challenges on behalf of other people. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I am from St. Louis, Missouri, born to a father from St. Louis and a mother from Key West, Florida. So that's a very odd mixture. And I ended up here as an adult in 2005 because I have relatives all over Florida. And I was checking out churches. And I found the first 2 Episcopal churches I went to, they just weren't it. The people were nice, but it just wasn't home. So I went again, and I walked into St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Delray Beach, and here's this guy who's not geriatric, because the Episcopal Church, everybody in the Episcopal Church knows they tend to be a little bit on the blue hair side. But the point of that is that if you're young in the Episcopal Church, you meet fast. So we made fast friends. There were 3 of us, and our birthdays all happened to be on the 13th.
Oh, weird.
So weird, right? So we said, well, this has to be, we're fast friends. We're like the 3 Musketeers. And unfortunately for the 3rd Musketeer, Jim and I fell in love with each other. So this is really, the story of the lodge is a love story, because I fell in love with someone that was a recovered alcoholic, but I had no idea what that meant. I knew I had battled my own disease that was not curable and not fixable. and learned how to live with that. And so that's why I think when my husband and I met each other, he had his experience from AA, and his, at that point, he was 6 years sober. And what he started asking around is, the housing in our community was just atrocious for people that were looking to go into a sober living facility. So my husband started talking about, let's just open one. And one house turned to 10 houses.
Wow. You guys are overachievers.
Yes, we are. We have a staff, but now it's back down to the 3 houses that we own. And we've kind of, this is what we're calling retirement, 3 homes, 24 men.
And do the men come in and out? Like, is that a constant shuffle, or do they sort of settled there? Is it sort of like where they stay?
Well, it's a bridge in between. So
Okay.
when they get out of treatment for drugs and alcohol, they'll come to a place like ours, hopefully, which is a sober living facility. Then usually the commitment is 6 months, but most people stay a year to 9 months. And I really think everybody knows that if you go to a sober living facility, your chances of staying sober obviously are quite a bit higher. In fact, if you can make it 1 year without a drug or a drink, your chances of staying sober long-term increase by 85%. If you don't make it that year, there are less than 15% chance you'll make it.
Wow. Yeah, it's boy, I'll tell you, these drugs and drinks. I mean, we are an addictive people. Like we get addicted to so many crazy things. I mean, you hear about people addicted today to TV, and addicted to sex, and addicted to porn, and addicted to we are really
Gambling.
Addicted to gambling. We're really not easy on ourselves, aren't we?
We aren't easy on ourselves at all. And that's the thing is, addiction's been around since people knew how to make substances that would alter themselves. And for some people, it really is a predisposition. And like I am predisposed to diabetes now from my father's side, and because of the problems I've had with my pancreas. If I were to just eat sugar and eat sugar and eat sugar and eat sugar and eat sugar, I would really be sick.
Well, I think almost everybody would be. I mean, I've heard that sugar, if it were a drug found today, it would be a phase 3 drug. I mean, that's
Yes,
so addictive and so dangerous, and the harm that it does, huge. I mean, I managed to kick the sugar habit so long ago that even my children don't have a sugar habit because it wasn't in our house. Nobody drank
wasn't in your
pop.
home.
Nobody had candy bars, and it wasn't like never,
No. But certainly with moderation, because what they're
I mean,
figuring out.
it just wasn't in the house. I mean, you couldn't come into my house and find, a case of Coke, or even a big bottle of Coke. I mean, you might find a can of Coke that somebody'd opened hadn't finished, which is odd, but we weren't addicted. So therefore you drank what you drank, and then you put it back, and then you realize that it really tasted awful the next day and threw it up. But anyway,
Yeah.
but that was our household, because I fortunately learned eons of time ago about the dangers of sugar. But we have so many substances that we really can become addicted to that are not good for us. Boy.
That are not good for us. Right. And then actually, Mary, I didn't know if you know this, the Diagnostic and Statistician Manual for these type of illnesses is in its 5th printing now. And now they've come up with substance addiction and behavioral or process addictions. So like we're seeing a huge number of middle-aged men where their families are leaving them because they can't get off the video game.
Oh boy.
And you don't, it's nothing, it's not logical. You can't use logic with this and go, well, doesn't their family mean anything to them? Or why can't they just kick the habit, or just grow up already, or whatever the pat canned answer is that never works.
Yeah, it is. I mean, really, we don't understand human beings really very well yet. And this addiction thing, I mean, it's just kind of like flip the switch on addiction to whatever your particular addiction is, and you've got a problem.
Yeah. Anytime I think that something causes you to be a mismanager of your own life, because people can get addicted to people, you know, and what they can get out of them, what they can use them for, very manipulative. I mean, even with 24, which is a cut down from when we had 60 men, they're the people that'll steal your wallet and help you look for it, Mary. What color did you say with that? Oh, wait, I think I saw that over there.
Oh, wow.
So, but the good news is, and what I do want everybody to know from this is, situations are never permanent. You know, change is eternal. And the only thing that you can't do is give up hope. Don't you ever quit.
And that's awesome. And I mean, to be able to give that to the addicts that you are working with on a regular basis, to get them through that 1 year hurdle is amazing.
Yeah, and we really, I mean, it's been an evolving process from when we very first started to know what were the gaps in the industry, you know, what's going on with the medical world has a big impact on us, because about 95% of our people come through treatment centers. So very few people find us on their own, just like searching the internet. Most people that get to us, they know it. They've been to a number of sober houses before. We're usually the last house on the last block on a lot of people's world.
So, are the treatment centers now changing the way they handle? Like, has that changed as well? Do you know?
It has, because insurance companies have been responding to the uptake in requests for payment for a treatment center. So we'll see people doing things like a 2-week residential detoxification, because the insurance companies were getting tired of paying for treatment over and over and over and over and over again.
But 2 weeks doesn't do much for you.
2 weeks does not do much for you. That's why we advocate for a sober living facility where they have other people there in the interim. Like I said, it's a bridge between your old life and your new. You can make those changes in your life. You can make those, take those risks by having a safety net under you, because we provide everything except for toiletries. You know, now you do have to get around yourself, but if you ask, we'll give you a ride somewhere. But you have to grow up is the biggest thing.
Well, yeah, you know, somewhere along the line, personal responsibility has to step in. I mean, just sort of like you finally got tired of not being personally responsible for your health. They have to get tired of not being able to take care of themselves and say, just a minute here, who's in charge of me? You know, I mean, you see 5-year-old kids realizing, hey, I'm in charge of me.
Right.
You know? And then somehow losing that, but you have to be in charge of you.
Yeah, and that's what we teach them again to learn, or for the first time if they've never learned it. I mean, and even things just as basic as starting a bank account, especially if they want to open a bank account and they've had problems in their past with bad checks or, you know, what have you. We have places that they can go in and just inquire about that. They know they won't be arrested or anything. To get some of these, I mean, these are adult things, right? We have to work on our credit. We have to work on our bills on time. we have to work on being true to our word first. Everybody that comes to us has to follow kind of a 3-step process. First they have to take an inventory and be real about where they are in their life. And then from there, they can make a list of priorities. Then they can create a stellar support group. That's essential. And that can be anyone it could be a support group from your church family, or from if you have a hobby, maybe somebody you want to start a genealogy group, but do something, have something that you can do and get the support group built. And that's helped me. Another thing that's helped me is music, doing a playlist. And I try to influence the other people to use the playlist. Like if they're walking or if they're riding on the bus, sometimes we have them ride the bus just so they can get used to it and be very grateful when they get a car back.
Yeah. So, have you done anything around podcasting? Like, are there any podcasts that are helpful, or you haven't looked into that?
There's a few podcasts. I would say that the main thing is the main groups, I would say, are the 12-step groups, the Al-Anon, the Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. There's also, if people are wanting to go to, it's called the SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. That would be an excellent place for people to go. But definitely, if you're in an area, all you have to do to find a meeting nearby you, a 12-step meeting, a recovery Dharma meeting, Celebrate Recovery, whichever group that you want to pick, Save Ourselves, Moderation Management. There's a lot of different support groups out there. So just keep looking until you find one, I would say. And then the third thing that we teach them to do is trust God, clean house, and help others.
Great motto. I mean, because really you have to start taking that responsibility, clean up your own life,
Yes.
Clean up whatever's going on in your world. And, God, reach out to God. Definitely that can help. I mean, lean on God.
Writing a journal, listening to music, as I mentioned before. There are so many of these things that it's really proven that once you get over that initial craving, if you can hang through that craving, it only lasts like 3 or 4 seconds. They've done studies on this.
Wow. But it seems like forever.
It does.
So do most of these people that you're looking after have families, or have they lost them as a result?
There's yes and yes. Yes, they have families, and yes, some of them have lost contact with their families because of their choices. We run a family lodge Zoom once a month for the parents of the people that are in our houses or that we work with virtually. And that's a really good resource for people. Most people don't know what to do when their child is on drugs or into alcohol. They don't know who to call or they know about treatment, but healing doesn't finalize in treatment. It only gets you on a start. You really need that
it's
first year.
Really finding that support that can actually pull you through that first year. I mean, that seems like the really big challenge is to get.
The big challenge is the first year.
Is to get that.
Really, the first one is the first day. Day two really, really, really stinks. Because then you wake up not clouded and go, I'm never going to be clouded again. And for them, that's a fate worse than death sometimes. You know,
Yeah.
you just, it's very, very insidious. It, especially through the pandemic, when we could get alcohol delivered to our house in overnight, it went off the rails. It's up 40%.
Oh, wow.
So
sad.
people and, you know, boredom, there was increased stress. That was one reason. There was increased availability. That was another reason. And there was boredom because
Well,
people
and
were
there
stuck.
was increased money because the government was shoveling money out the door and no jobs to go to. So I
No
mean,
job to go to.
talk about all kinds of opportunities to go off the rail that came at
Domestic
people.
violence. Yeah, a lot of things are up, but we do see a trend in what we're doing. People are getting back into life, not just staying in the recovery hamster wheel, you know, because you can do that and never get a real job and never really do anything with your life. But the people that have changed and moved on and really made a difference, like the people you're talking to and the people that we are, they took it seriously from day one. You
Yeah.
have to. Deadly serious.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is deadly serious because it is deadly serious.
Yeah, but I would just welcome anybody that is listening or watching. Definitely reach out to us. We'll have all of our contact information in the show notes. Because even if we can't help.
Yeah, what's the easiest? Is there a domain name or is there something
that
they can go to that we can give them?
Sure. Our main website is www.thelodgedelray, THELODGEDELRAY.com. All of our information is on there. And if I wanted to see if I could offer to your listeners, these are home tests. And if you have anybody within the sound of my voice that the parents want to test their children, or the wife wants to test her husband, just to, you know, to see, these are about a $45 retail. If we're willing to send these out to get them to anybody that needs them, just get a hold of us on our website, or you can also email me in the email at the description.
So this is D as in dog, lodge .delray. Is that right?
THE
V.
Mm-hmm.
V as in Vancouver.
THE is in the.
Oh, okay. Sorry, the D Lodge.
It's just the Lodge Delray. THELODGEDELRAY.com. I'm gonna put it with the hyperlink.
Perfect. So thelodgedelray.com. Perfect. That's great. People can see that. Excellent. Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure, and sadly, we are out of time. These shows go by way so fast. And you have been a wonderful guest, so I really appreciate it. And I think you have offered something that is hard for people to hear, but people need to hear it because they're not alone. I mean, this is not somebody as in one somebody. It's thousands of somebody who is suffering here. And the fact that we can offer them some hope is, I think, something that certainly I am pleased to be able to do. And I know you are super pleased to be able to do.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a calling. Someone dies in America every 7 seconds. And those are the people that I want to represent and tell a story that they can't tell anymore, because this didn't just happen in a vacuum. The medical community needs to be seriously looked at. And I know that's a topic for another day, but we really need to get a hold on this addiction issue.
Well, yeah, and it's so easy to just make assumptions about people, and there's no assumptions to be made because everybody's on their own journey, and we're all human beings trying our best to succeed, and it's a tough journey in so many ways, whether it's your health or drugs, and
Mhm.
there's so many ways to get addicted. I mean, as I said at the beginning of the show, sugar is one of the most addictive drugs, and yet we have an absolute epidemic of obesity, and that is obviously killing people. So there are many ways that we can definitely do better. Anyway, Adrienne, thank you so much. And our listeners will certainly be grateful for the information you've been able to convey. Thank you again so very much.
Thank you, Mary.